Tennessee is going to have a tough time beating Georgia this week. It's going to be tough, as bad as Georgia has played at times. But that might not matter.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Full reaction to the college football playoff rankings. As always, I have many thoughts and picking every game in the SEC this week. And we'll talk about one of those games first with Eric Kane, Locked On Vols, friend of the show, joining me here to talk about Tennessee and Georgia. It's a big showdown this week, Eric, and we'll talk about Nico Iamaleava in a moment. But let's presume that he's good to go and that he's playing this week. I think this is going to be tough for Tennessee to beat Georgia for two reasons. Number one, Georgia is coming back home off of a game in which they were beaten badly. That's number one. And then number two, Georgia needs to win this game far more than Tennessee. 10-2 SEC teams, which is the most fun chaos scenario for everyone to dream about, and looks like it's coming to fruition week by week, one game at a time. This is one of those games. I think that'll happen here, but I think Georgia backs up against the wall at home after the big loss. I think that makes them a better version of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what Kirby Smart's telling the team this week, because Kirby Smart, the ultimate motivator. I mean, he had everybody back-to-back coming off a national championship. He had that entire locker room thinking that everybody thought they sucked. Like, what? Like, everybody picked them to finish fifth in the SEC East. Okay, so I can only imagine. Nobody was more frustrated when that line came out on Sunday than Kirby Smart, because How is he trying to motivate his team when they know that, a 9-10 point favorite at home? So I think Georgia is a solid football team. I think Georgia's a good football team. Is Georgia as dominant as it's been in years past? Absolutely not.
Nope.
Absolutely not. So what's the difference in this matchup compared to when it was a similar matchup in 2022? Tennessee has a defense. Tennessee's defense is legit. Outside of two games, Tennessee's defense has been elite. Nothing short than elite. They haven't allowed an opponent to score over 20 points in a game this season. I don't care who you're playing. I mean, that's an incredible streak. So Tennessee's got a defense. So for Tennessee, if Nico plays, for Tennessee to win and pull off this upset, defense has got to have an elite night, okay? Tennessee's got to run the football, and Nico's got to continue playing the way that he's played here lately. He's played really, really well his last 8 quarters of football. He's explosive plays have returned back in the passing game. He's running the football. He's making right decisions. So it's going to be tough to win on the road. One, because Georgia's back's against the wall. Two, Tennessee's back's kind of against the wall as well, because the committee hates Tennessee. Three, it's on the road. That's a tough place to play. But, I mean, Tennessee's a pretty good team. So it doesn't have to be some Herculean effort for Tennessee to win this game, because Georgia's just not as dominant as it's usually been.
Yeah, and the defense for Georgia, I did not think they were giving up 28 points to Ole Miss a week ago, especially in those weather conditions. The Rebels found a way to make that happen. Props to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin there, and Jackson Dart and everybody. And Ole Miss, still a good football team, a really good football team. But that's what everybody feels like in the SEC. Like, if I asked you right now, who's the best team in the SEC? Who are you going to say? Alabama, who lost to Vanderbilt? Tennessee, who lost on the road to Arkansas and can't score in the first half? Or Texas A&M that lost to South Carolina? Like, this is the most parity I think the SEC has ever seen. I think on any given day, Tennessee could be the best team, Georgia could be the best team, Bama could be the best team. I think it just depends on which version of every football team shows up.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Tennessee had a road loss at Arkansas. Ole Miss, who's very much in the college football playoff conversation, and it has the worst loss of any team in the college football playoff conversation. How did they lose to
Kentucky? Kentucky is so not good.
At home. At home. So, like, I mean, I don't know what's going on. It's you're right. I mean, at one point in time, I would have told you Texas. At one point in time, I would have told you Georgia. Alabama's probably playing better than anybody right now. Tennessee's beating Alabama. So it's a fun conversation, man. And it's even fueled with this first year of the 12-team playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all wild and crazy. Like, if this were the 4-team playoff era, Eric, we'd be talking about the SEC getting left out of the playoff. That's a realistic thing that could have happened, but we expanded the playoff. So, alas, here we are. Now, the reason that I think this line has come down, Eric, as you alluded to, is the Tennessee defense is really good. And the Georgia offense, let's just call a spade a spade. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's not average. It's not just trying to figure. It looks bad. They can't run the ball, and Carson Beck doesn't know which team he's supposed to be throwing it to every single week. He finds a way, no matter the weather conditions, to throw it to the other side. So I think the motivation factor for Georgia is why the offense can do enough. But I'm higher on Georgia's defense getting right in this game. I think you could see a Georgia defensive touchdown. I think they'll play the field position game very well. And at home, they'll ride the home crowd to a victory. But I am not bullish on that Georgia offense. I think both of these teams are scoring, wait for it, under 24 points.
Yeah, the total's low in this game. And, it makes, and of course, there's so much uncertainty right now, like which quarterback's going to play for Tennessee. Is Nico going to go? And, he didn't come out for the second half against Mississippi State. Kept him in the locker room. There's light shows. There's loud noises. When he came out on the field after the game, he had a towel over his head. So let's use our imagination, folks. Let's see. It's going to be a day-by-day thing. So if Nico plays, or even if Gaston Moore plays, I think it's going to be tough sledding for the offense. But Tennessee does have Dylan Sampson, so that's a feather in the cap. And they got an offensive line that's already blocked for over 2,000 yards this year on the ground. I agree with you about Georgia's offense, man. Georgia can't run the football at all. The offensive line has been battered and bruised, and that's contributed to the struggles of Carson Beck. Carson Beck, arguably a first-round draft pick if he would have went last year. And then if
he might have been number one.
If you talk to some people in the industry, man, right now, maybe third, fourth. I mean,
I think Mel Kiper's got him down to the number 6 quarterback.
That gamble for him did not pay off. And again, we'll talk draft later on, but nonetheless, Carson Beck is a turnover machine right now.
Oh, wait, he wouldn't have been number one last year. He was going to be number one in 2025 because this was the draft. Yeah, everyone was there. Okay, I retract that particular remark.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I mean, again, that decision to not go last year and come back, it hasn't paid off so far. But nonetheless, a battered and bruised offensive line. He's turning the football over, 14 turnovers in the last 6 games. They can't run the football at all. They're completely one-dimensional. You don't have Brock Bowers, a Darnell Washington, a George Pickens, some of these big-time playmakers out there, and they're just kind of suspect out there. You got some guys who are fine, Arian Smith, you got Dylan Bell, a couple other guys. Like, they're not bad, but they're just kind of it's not been looking good. And you couple that with Tennessee's defensive line that I think is going to give that offensive line a whole lot of issues. Tennessee's corners. I like this to be a defensive football game for sure. I think, and now Carson Beck can still throw it up when he's got time, when he's protected. I still think he's a fine quarterback. He's got a ton of passing yards, so it's not like they're bad. But I think Tennessee's defense will force him into making bad mistakes, and I think Tennessee can capitalize on it. So I think, as crazy as it sounds, even if Nico doesn't play, I think this can be a really close game. I do.
Yeah, and this is an elimination game for Georgia with the way the SEC is shaping out in the Big Ten. Everything, like 9 of 3 teams are not getting in. LSU learned that lesson. LSU dropped further than I thought they would, but they also got blasted on their home field by Alabama. I want to wrap with the quarterback situation, Eric, because there's some question about whether Nico will go. We don't know right now. It is the answer to the question many of you might ask us here. But if he's not able to go, is this going to be a game that's not even worth watching and Tennessee won't score a single point?
No, I mean, Tennessee will score. I think it would be tough for Tennessee to win without Nico. I think it's going to be tough anyway because you're on the road. I mean, everything else that comes with that, right? I mean, the crowd, pre-snap penalties, all that type of stuff. I mean, Nico's still young in his career, and of course, Gaston Moore in this situation would be the quarterback for Tennessee, who's a 5th-year senior, has a PhD level degree in this offense, came with Josh Heupel from UCF. He has a cannon of an arm. He came in with a 13-point lead against Mississippi State and grew that lead in the second half last week. So he's fine, but there's a difference in being fine and then going down to Georgia between the hedges and winning. So I think Tennessee needs Nico. But if it is Gaston Moore, you need things to hit, right? The run game has got to dominate this football game. When they get in the red zone, they've got to be efficient, which Tennessee hasn't been here lately. The defense has got to create some opportunities for the offense. Tennessee will run its offense. Tennessee will not be as explosive, in my opinion. Maybe not have as many points, but Tennessee will certainly score with Gaston Moore. It's just you have so much more potential and upside with a guy like Nico because Nico can create on the fly and off-level throws, off-platform, all that type of stuff. So I think it'll be tough. It'll be tough either way, but I think it'll be really tough for Tennessee if Nico's not playing.
Eric Kane, Locked On Vols. Great stuff as always, Eric.
Hey, thanks so much.
The college football playoff rankings came out. I have thoughts. I always do, and they're coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time, which has Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you're looking for, and maybe the best part, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Yeah, it is game time. So we've got another edition of these wonderful, beautiful-ish 12-team playoff rankings. And look, it's closer. It's closer to being good. Penn State's still ahead of Indiana. Why? I'm not entirely certain. And look, I know Indiana just played their closest game of the year. It's the first time they've lost, they haven't lost yet. It's the first time they've only won by single digits. Pretty crazy statement to make, but alas, it's a true one, and Indiana gets a bye before they go to Columbus next week to take on Ohio State. And in that moment, if Indiana loses, watch how far the committee is going to drop them. This is better. Having them in the top 5 at the very least. Should they be behind Penn State? No. Should they be behind Texas? Probably. Probably. If you want to judge each team solely based on the merit, ignore the eye test and everything, but the merit of what they have done this season, yeah, you'd probably put Texas up there because they're in the SEC, and I think the SEC's got more tough teams than the Big Ten does. The Big Ten, very top-heavy, but also incredibly good. Big Ten's got 4 of the top 5 teams in the playoff rankings. That, of course, isn't going to last by the end of it. You know what is going to last? The SEC is going to run the show here. So the minimum number of teams, it looks like the SEC will get into this league, or get into this playoff, rather, is 4. Before the year, I said, yeah, 3 is the baseline minimum. 4 is what I predict. 5 is probably the max. Boy, what if everyone winds up at 10-2? What if Tennessee loses to Georgia, and then Tennessee and Georgia don't lose another game? What if Ole Miss wins every game from here on out? What if Bama wins every game from here on out? And then Texas A&M beats Texas. There are going to be more 10-2 teams than anybody knows what to do with here, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be fun. And then when the SEC gets a bunch of preferential treatment, you just wait. You just wait. If that scenario comes to pass, I don't know who the first person will be, but I doubt he'll be the last to opine that the playoff isn't big enough, and this is why you need more teams, and you need to keep expanding it and just going and going and going. Because once you get the snowball rolling down the hill, it just keeps accumulating snow. It doesn't stop. You could stop it for a moment, but eventually someone's going to let it go. Gravity will take over, and there's no way to melt it either because in this hypothetical, you're in Antarctica. So I'm glad Indiana has been moved up 3 spots, that they are now one of the 5 best teams in the eyes of the committee in all of college football. I think if they win 11 games, which they will, they should be a lock to the playoff. Indiana should only miss the playoff if they lose their next 2 games. They could lose to Ohio State. They're not going to lose to Purdue. Purdue's not any good. So Indiana should be into the college football playoff, and they should get a first-round game. They should. They have been wildly impressive, even if they lose to Ohio State, which they might not do anyway. And if they were to then lose the Big Ten championship game, theoretically to Oregon, they'd get a home playoff game, or at least they should. But then you're just going to have all these 10-2 teams. And this is going to be just a really, really fun debate to have for everyone, because everybody loves themselves some quote-unquote SEC bias, right? I am a proponent of SEC bias to an extent. I have watched the SEC this year. They don't have a great team in the league. They have a bunch of really good ones. They have a bunch of good or really good teams. They don't have a great team in that league. You know how I know that? You know how I know that? Because no one is winning all the time. Everybody's beating up on each other. And Georgia looks likely to beat up on Tennessee this week. We'll see if Nico Iamaleava even plays. He's reportedly in concussion protocol. That came out after we recorded the first segment on today's show. But if he doesn't go, well, then you're going to have Tennessee at 10-2. Are you going to punish them for not having Nico in that particular game? Probably not. Would you punish them if Nico doesn't play by the time the end of the season rolls around, if he were to miss extended time, I don't know that that would happen. I'm just throwing things against the wall here because there are a lot of different scenarios. Well, we saw the committee punish Florida State for having their quarterback get injured last year. Crazier things have happened, and Tennessee would have a second loss. I'm really interested to see what they do with Notre Dame. So Notre Dame comes in at 8. And by the way, I should, for those who didn't see the rankings, the top 12 go like this. Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5, BYU 6, Tennessee 8, Tennessee 7, Notre Dame 8, Miami falls down to 9, Bama is at 10, Ole Miss is up 5 spots to number 11, Georgia's down 9 spots to number 12, Boise State is at 13th. So I'll talk about the Boise State factor in just a moment, but give me the scenario where the SEC doesn't get at least 4 teams into the college football playoff. Just lay it out for me. Explain it to me. The Big Ten also in a prime position to get 4 teams into the playoff. If Ohio State loses to Indiana, are they keeping the Buckeyes out? Are they really going to do that? SMU is a 1-loss team. SMU's got a top 10 win at the moment their only loss is to a top 10 team. That's the only loss SMU has this year. And they would not be, if the playoff were to start today, they would not be viewed as an at-large team by the committee. So I think the committee's making a very clear statement here that only one Big 12 team's going to get in unless BYU goes undefeated in the regular season, perhaps, and they pull a TCU from a couple of years ago. There's certainly only going to be one team that gets in from the ACC now that Miami lost to Georgia Tech this past weekend. They go into the bye, try to work on some things, and go from there. But the ACC is only getting one team in. The group of 5 will, in all likelihood, only get one team in. Army and Tulane, don't forget about Tulane, have cracked the top 25. Army at 24, Tulane at 25. Either one of them could end up being the highest ranked group of 5 champion if they go on. Army and Tulane, of course, play in the same conference. So if you look at how the playoff rankings are shaking out, Colorado's up to 17th. That puts a damper on something that I have brought up. I wasn't definitive per se that this is going to happen, but it was trending in this direction that, hey, the Big 12 champion might not get the bye if it isn't BYU. Well, that's not going to be the case anymore. If Colorado goes up 3 spots after last week, in which they went down to Texas Tech and picked up a solid win. Texas Tech, a respectable team. They're not ranked, of course. They've got Utah this week, who isn't any good. They go at Kansas, host Oklahoma State. If Colorado has already moved up without a ranked win to be within 4 spots of Boise State, who moved down after they won but weren't totally impressive, that makes me think a Big 12 championship game would bump Colorado over Boise State, and the Broncos or whoever the G5 champion is will have to play a first-round game, and the 4 power conference champions will wind up with those 4 first-round byes. But Notre Dame is interesting because they're sitting there at 8-1 with a loss to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, who's 5-4. They're not even a good team in the MAC. They're just an average, solid, bowl-bound in all likelihood. I don't want to jinx the Huskies here. They're a bowl-bound team in the MAC, and that's it. And they won at Notre Dame. Explain that to me. Explain it to me. I don't understand. There are 3 games left for Notre Dame this year. One of them's a ranked win, or a ranked opportunity, rather, to pick up a win against Army in a couple weeks. Virginia this week. Don't sleep on the Cavaliers. That's a better football team than you and I thought they were going to be this season. And then they have to go at USC. I hope, I'm not optimistic, based on how the rankings have come out every week and the favor given to certain brands and conferences and whatnot. I hope that Notre Dame losing a second game takes them out of the playoff. I hope they're not there. I'd rather have a 10-2 SEC than a 10-2 Notre Dame, whose schedule is not particularly strong, and they lost to NIU. I know they picked up a great road win week 1 against Texas A&M, but that has to be completely null and void with a home loss to NIU, Northern Illinois, directional school in the MAC. I'm not some huge anti-Notre Dame guy. I am just pro-fairness and consistency guy to make the best of this bungled playoff structure that we have come up with here in college football. That's what I am seeking. I am seeking best possible playoff outcome here. If Notre Dame loses a single solitary game, I don't care if it's to Army, Virginia, or USC, kick them out. Kick them out, full stop, no explanation, no discussion, done, do not pass go, do not collect $200. So those are my instant thoughts on the college football playoff rankings. Not that I have a lot of opinions, of course. I have opinions on who's going to win the games this week in the SEC. Florida, LSU. Not a lot on the line for Florida, but more on the line than you think for the LSU Tigers. That's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. Yes, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game on Sundays, you can go place the wager that you are sensing is going to hit over at FanDuel. Again, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet for new customers at FanDuel.com. And all these college football games we're talking about, do you think you know what's going to happen? Do you believe in your own abilities? Well, FanDuel.com is where you can try them out. And they just have a bunch of great information over there where you can get an idea of how the betting world feels about particular teams. So, for example, South Carolina, Missouri, top 25 matchup. Close game, right? Nope, South Carolina minus 12.5. Maybe they'll lose outright. Maybe they cover that number. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So let's get to my SEC picks for the week, and I'm starting with LSU Florida because this was almost going to be an interesting game. It was almost going to be an interesting game. Not because LSU was almost going to be a college football playoff at-large team. Their playoff hopes actually aren't done. LSU can still make the college football playoff. They just have to win the SEC. And guess what? That's possible. Remember, they're a 3-loss team, but one of those losses is to USC. So they're not out of it just yet. They're in need of a bounce back here, I think, for the morale of the locker room, morale of the fan base, and to quite literally keep their SEC title hope and therefore playoff and national championship hopes alive. It's still possible. On the other side, I think the only reason Florida fans have to go to this game is to find a reason to drink. Because LSU has something to play for. They're a better team. They just got their butts kicked on their home field the week prior. I wouldn't want to be Florida in this spot. I really wouldn't. Because the Gators offense, you're not going to be able to do a lot. Even against an LSU defense that has been up and down, I think Blake Baker's doing a solid job. Both he and Dan Tinlin, who is USC's defense coordinator, they've made those units better, but they need to take another jump in week 2. But that's an off-season topic. So I think LSU goes on the road here. And yeah, Florida might want to play spoiler a little bit. I think eventually the limitations are going to show up. I just expect a bounce back spot from LSU. That's what I see in this game. So give me LSU to win the game 28-21. A little bit closer than you'd think, but I think LSU wins. I think LSU covers as well. How about Texas? Texas is going to Arkansas. I like the Hogs to cover. The Hogs have been a home double-digit favorite before, and they gave Tennessee their only loss of the season. I'll talk more about Tennessee and Georgia in just a moment, but spoiler alert, yeah, I do indeed think Georgia's going to win the football game. I think Texas will win in this spot. I'm curious to see how Quinn Ewers looks, because on a week-to-week basis, we get a lot of up and down with Quinn Ewers. Sometimes we see him and he plays great, and he looks like a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And then you see him and you go, how much worse could Arch Manning be? That is the Jekyll and Hyde nature of Quinn Ewers. And I have not written off Arkansas as being a bad team. Yeah, they got blown out by Ole Miss. Okay. Did you know that Ole Miss is a really good team? Yeah, they are a really good team. I think Arkansas is going to cover this in this spot. I'll take Texas to win 28-16. Weird score. A lot of field goals for Arkansas, not as many for Texas. I think that's how they pull away in this spot because I like Texas's defense a little bit more than I like Arkansas. A good bit more than I like Arkansas's. But I don't expect Texas to go in and put up 40, 50 points. I mean, Ole Miss rather went in and put up a lot. The number started with a 6. I don't think that Texas does that here. I think it's interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if Arkansas wins the game. But as I've said before, I'm rooting for Texas because I want the maximum stakes for Texas A&M in the last week of the regular season. How about Auburn? I can't even with Auburn. I believed in them before the year. I was very wrong. They are not good. Going with Peyton Thorne at quarterback, a disastrous decision for Hugh Freeze. Auburn is a quarterback away. They've got the receivers. They've got a preseason all-conference running back. Their offensive line's respectable. Their defense can play. They don't have a quarterback. And for Hugh Freeze, that's a problem. That he cannot elevate an average to below average quarterback talent in Peyton Thorne, to be an average or slightly above average player, that's not a great sign. They're playing Louisiana Monroe this week. Do you think they're going to cover 14? Why? That's my answer. Why? Or not 14, the number 24. Sorry, 24. But I think they're going to win by around 14. I don't even know why. I guess the defense, like I suppose, Auburn 20-6 over Louisiana Monroe. I do not like Auburn's offense at all. Speaking of offenses I don't like in the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs play this week. I said earlier, I think this is a bounce back spot. The questions about Nico Iamaleava would certainly change my perception of Tennessee here, because I know you got a fifth-year backup in the system. He's the backup for a reason. And this is not a guy that feels like he's, next to the heir to the throne, next in line, anything like that. It's just, he's who Tennessee's backup quarterback is. So if he ends up playing, Georgia wins, Georgia covers. They're favored by 9.5 according to our friends at FanDuel. Georgia wins and covers if Nico doesn't play. If Nico does play, what inclination do you have to say that Georgia's going to win by 9 or more points? Because they could hold Tennessee's offense under 14. But how in the world do you look at what Georgia has done offensively over the last several weeks and say, yeah, I think against that Tennessee defense, which has been one of the best in all of college football, yeah, I think against that Tennessee defense, you're going to see Georgia's offense get right. No, I don't think so. I like Tennessee's defense more than Texas. So this is a spot where Georgia is going to play with that same sort of energy as they did down in Austin. That's my suspicion for Kirby Smart's team. But if Nico is playing, yeah, I'm taking Georgia to win a close one, but a low scoring one. 17-13. Georgia over Tennessee if Nico plays. If Nico does not play, 17-3. That's the final score. I'm not putting any faith in Georgia's offense there. No one's reaching 20 points in that football game. Elsewhere around the SEC, South Carolina is favored by 12.5 against Missouri. It feels like just a hair too much, though I like South Carolina and I don't like Missouri. This is one of those spots where, yeah, the way that it should play out on paper, don't think we're going to get there. Don't think we're quite going to get there. South Carolina, I think this is an overreaction line. I think this is a line where Vegas says, ooh, everybody loves South Carolina. Nobody likes Missouri. Here's this big juicy number, and people will bet on that, and they know that Missouri's capable of covering. Missouri's a fine team. They're not a playoff team like Eli Drinkowitz thinks, though they have the chance to kind of prove that, sort of, against a good South Carolina team on the road in this spot. I'll take South Carolina to win 27-17. They beat the Tigers. How about Texas A&M? Texas A&M, oh boy. They're playing New Mexico State. Good thing Diego Pavia's not there. Diego Pavia not in the house. He is not there anymore. That's a good thing, I think, for Texas A&M. They're going to be fine. I continue to root for the Aggies here. Texas A&M New Mexico State not even having a good year in Conference USA. They were in the Conference USA championship game last season. Yeah, and then everybody left. Has not gone quite as well for the Aggies this season. So it's a big number here. Take Texas A&M 56-3. Yeah, there you go. That's a number that I think Texas A&M is putting up. 56-3. They'll beat New Mexico State. And then I want to wrap by harping on something that I have said previously, will continue to advocate for until it changes. The late season SEC cupcakes are bad for everyone. Do you know where Murray State and Mercer are? Those are the opponents for Kentucky and Alabama this week. Some of you may be able to identify where those schools are. That's great. Congratulations. They should not be playing Kentucky and Alabama at this point in the season. Kentucky and Alabama should be playing each other. And Murray State and Mercer should be playing each other. That's what should have happened here. Instead, the SEC late season cupcake and the ACC does the same sort of thing. It's awful. It's terrible. These games belong in the early part of the season. First 3, maybe 4 weeks, I'll allow it. Everything from there on, it is just completely absurd that Bama, in the thick of a playoff hunt, gets essentially a bye week. They get a tune-up week while other people have to play actual conference games. It's absurd. It is laughably bad, but hey, that's college football sometimes. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.